Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. At this point, what are conservatives trying to conserve? Too many Republicans talk like the left, walk like the left, pander like the left, and assume their worldview too, at least in a limited sense. This is why Republicans always seem to be just a few years behind Democrats on major issues, giving up on gay marriage, abortion, and even some race issues, trying to conserve only slightly earlier versions of the left's revolution. Case in point, California's GOP chairwoman allowed whatever intern was in charge of her social media to blast out "Happy Kwanzaa." The caption reads, "Wishing all who celebrate Kwanzaa a week filled with love, unity, reflection of faith, and a happy new year." For those of you who don't know what the big deal is, our friend Saurabh Sharma, the president of American Moment, explains. He writes, quote, "It's, quote, a fake holiday invented by a communist-fed, violent pervert and convicted criminal, Ronald McKinley Everett, also known by his adopted LARP moniker, Maulana Nabazitha Karenga. Mr. Karenga was one of the founders of an extremist black separatist movement called U.S. Organization, which the FBI funded as part of its efforts to stir conflict in black political groups. Sound familiar? This eventually resulted in murderous conflict with the Black Panthers. Karenga was later in life sentenced to up to 10 years in prison for assaulting women. The testimony alleged that women were stripped naked and beaten with an electrical cord. He also apparently hit people on the head with toasters and put a hot soldering iron in a woman's mouth. Karenga invented Kwanzaa in 1966 to racialize Americans and divorce blacks from a strong tie to broader American culture, their Christian faith. He wanted to give blacks an alternative to the existing holiday rather than simply imitate the practice of the dominant society. The 7 principles of Kwanzaa are unity, self-determination, collective work, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith. Read the reasoning of these values. None are grounded in a deep love of country, family, or faith. Rather, all are designed to whip up racial foment. Today, Karenga enjoys a sinecure at the chair of the Africana Studies Department at California State University, Long Beach. There, he uses the state funds granted to him to teach blacks to hate America and whites to hate themselves. Kwanzaa is in some ways the perfect regime holiday. It gives our ruling class the appearance of respecting the transcendent and traditional, all while underwriting their profane political goals and requiring none of the sacrifice or devotion that true worship and thanksgiving require." End quote. Joining us now to discuss all of this and more is Daniel Greenfield, a Shillman Journalism Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Daniel, thanks for being here again tonight.
My pleasure, and a happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa. What do you make of this pandering by the California Republican chairwoman, sounding like she's Kamala Harris or something?
They know nothing of basic history or conservative principles. You know, Kwanzaa really came out of a shootout on the UCLA campus when the Karenga, who was the founder of Kwanzaa, was also the co-founder of an organization known as United Slaves, was in a shootout with Black Panthers over who would get to control the Black Studies Department at UCLA. This is really where Kwanzaa comes out of. The United Slaves had their 7 principles. These end up as the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. And Ron Karenga got crazier and crazier and crazier until he was convinced that people were trying to poison him, resulting in the horrifying torture you quoted before. So this is a guy who was mentally unstable, was basically a domestic terrorist. And you know, California Republicans of a generation ago knew this, but they're putting in so many people who know nothing except how to pander. They are bringing identity politics into the Republican Party, into the conservative movement, and it is an absolute disaster.
It really is. And like you're saying, also when we saw in the 60s and the 70s up through to today, but a lot of those, Black Power type movements, a lot of them really mixed in with Marxist ideology. And we're still seeing that today, right? BLM, one of the co-founders, Patricia Kalors, talked about being a, a trained Marxist. We see that being used a lot. So when Republicans do this pandering, it's not just cringe and kind of embarrassing, like you said, given the back history to Kwanzaa, but also, as you were mentioning a moment before, I'd like to kind of expand on this, but is it also a way to almost have a Trojan horse of bringing in some of that Marxist undertones even into how Republicans view race relations, economics, or really anything else?
Absolutely. You bring in identity politics, you're bringing in Marxism. Ron Karenga himself said the only difference between Marxism and his worldview was race.